what would you describe yourself as, just as a quick like synopsis? Because I have an idea who you are, but maybe you might have a better description of yourself.
Probably someone who lives pretty far outside the boundaries of society and just kind of does his own thing, but at the same time tries to influence society. Yeah.
I like it. I respect it. Ah. Okay, so last episode I talked about accessibility in gaming. I won't bore you here about the whole entire synopsis, but what you kind of need to know for this is that HAX Money, a professional Melee player with arthritis, made a controller called the Box, which, after much pushback, he would release a manifesto in 2018, which would later legalize the Box. Now, after I released that video, I sent him a DM saying, hey, I love your stuff, would love to have a conversation with you, and he said yes. I'm very thankful that HAX gave me, a small content creator, an opportunity to speak out and to be heard. What you're about to hear is me and HAX's recorded conversation. Parts of it will be cut for clarity's sake, as well as me chiming in and out to allow more context and clarity. If you like this content and you like what I do, please hit like and subscribe for more videos like this. And also to give HAX some love. It'll mean a lot to me. Without further ado, here's our conversation. My first question for you is, what have you been doing prior to 2018? And I want to clarify something, that I'm not asking about your past controversies. I'm more, because I'm not here for gotcha journalism, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely curious as in, like, since you released the Box and since it became legalized, what have you been working on?
Before 2018, I think 2018 and onward was kind of when my life direction started to formulate a lot more so, in terms of like where my duties would go from there. Because like 2018 and onward was when Box became a thing, and from there I had other obligations, such as like 1.03 now is actually a similar obligation. It's tied. It's like a twin project in the sense that I also have to help fix the game for people to make it so that the Box is even more so on a level playing field. So after 2018, my duties kind of became really clear, but I'd say before that, it wasn't exactly clear what I was going to do with my life. I wanted Melee to work and I was intent on making it work, but it wasn't really until the Box happened that I became like bound to the game, in the sense that I had to make it within the game in order to advance it in ways that only I was capable of doing. So to answer your question, I think before then I had a general lack of direction, because I didn't go to college. I technically did for a couple of days until I reached the conclusion I expected, which is that I wasn't going to do it. So between like 2012 and 2017 actually, because that's when I started making the Box. I'd say between 2012 and 2017, I was a bit of a wanderer. But then 2017, 2018 was when my life started to secure its direction.
One thing I thought was quite interesting in your story was, well, after the Box, you worked on 1.03, which was a quality of life update, from my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple of questions about that, which was like, how has that been going for you in the sense of has it been adopted by tournaments?
A couple of tournaments have adopted it. When I get back to the New York scene, I'm gonna advise for them to run it at Nightclub, because I'm just as confident in this proposition as I am in the Box itself. You see, back in 2017, I initially proposed game modifications in the form of an Arduino microchip. And what this microchip did was it provided 100% dashback, for example, which was going to be necessary in order for the Box to be legal. There was no way that you'd be able to compete on a Box on vanilla Melee without people complaining that it has 100% dashback and their controller doesn't. So that was immediately obvious that there were going to have to be mods for those more mainstream mechanics. But what 1.03 is basically doing is going down the full list of mechanics, meaning it's fixing every single one where the Box would automatically plug in with an advantage, because that's the approach that has to be taken at this point.
Yeah, because I see, like, I have a couple of screenshots of it, of like the notorious Pokemon Stadium, which is like just notoriously known for just breaking, and of just people falling out of the stage. One
Yeah.
thing that caught my attention was that one of the stage modifications was freezing Final Destination. And can you elaborate on that change? Because from my understanding, it's a stagnant stage to begin with.
Oh, okay. So freezing Final Destination is a strictly aesthetic change, and it's actually already in effect on netplay. So what it does is it means that you freeze the background aesthetics to only maintain the starry sky that the stage spawns with. The reason they do it on netplay is because the transitions would cause latency, so they have to remove them.
Okay.
But in terms of why it's better for console gameplay, it's not only for the sake of synchronizing with netplay, but it's also for the sake of removing the white background transition, the one where the sky turns white.
Okay.
It's pretty tough to see white characters during that transition, and
Okay.
so I think it's important to get rid of that one.
No, I agree. It's a huge visibility issue.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I actually didn't realize that there was visibility issues. Was that the intent behind it, or was it just because of the latency?
Well, I think matching with netplay in itself is a valid reason, but for me personally, I really struggle to see like white Marth and white Peach during the white segment. It also applies floor shake, believe it or not.
Okay.
Although you could argue that that's separate. Like, for example, you could theoretically keep the white transition and remove the floor shake. Floor shake is a special effect in Melee that very few things cause. When Bowser lands on a stage, it applies floor shake. It's like a fun fact.
Okay.
And when the white transition for FD arrives, it also applies floor shake to the entire stage.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It makes it even more obnoxious.
Okay. That's actually, I didn't know that. So, how did you determine the nerfs for the box? Like, who did you communicate with outside of yourself that the tools of the box like worked for people with arthritis and that the nerfs were fair?
I did the research and development entirely by myself in terms of coordinates and nerfing specific mechanics. So the justification for the nerfs was if there was any type of precision advantage, it would be removed from the controller. Meaning if there was anything that could be considered not feasible to perform with an analog stick. Some of the nerfs are really weird. Some of the nerfs are like, there's a single Y value in the game that lets you short hop and then guarantee that you don't tap jump. There are 2 X values in the game that let you double jump with Yoshi, Kirby, and Jigglypuff without turning around. Things like this, if there's any type of precision advantage, pretty much got removed. And then there were some travel time removals as well, like pivot tilts and smash DI had to be toned down. Pretty much everything that could be nerfed was nerfed.
Like, that actually bleeds into my next question of like what makes a tool overpowered. So for a lot of people, as an example of turbo mode is what comes to mind, which is like a modification on a controller. So I kind of want your input. You mentioned accuracy or being too consistent.
Yeah, so nothing in here pertains to like turbo style inputs because that implies that there's a macro on the controller. Macro, I define it as there being some type of timing based exploit.
Okay.
That's what that's what a turbo mode button falls under. This doesn't have anything to do with that. It's all happening in real time. Like all the inputs that are nerfed are real time nerfs, just basically to bring the digital inputs more in line with what could be considered reasonable with an analog stick.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. I'm not pointing out that the box is like flawed or overpowered, as maybe some of your like people in the scene might argue. I'm more consistent of like helping identify maybe the people who might think it's overpowered.
If you don't give it 1.03, it still is.
Okay.
I'll be entirely honest. I'll be completely honest. That's partly why this second project of mine is so important, because even after you nerf all of the like specific coordinates that wouldn't be reasonable to pinpoint accurately, you still are left with a lot of advantages just due to the fact that you're using a digital 8-way controller. There are, for example, that type of controller has no polling issues, and it still has precision over quite a few mechanics, like 1.0 cardinal, shield drop, vertical throws, that's a more obscure one that people didn't really know about until I brought it up recently. C-stick ledge fall, that's another one that I just fixed. These are mechanics where the 8-way digital controller is better.
Okay.
Even after the nerfs, it's still better. And so that's why patching the GameCube controller is the second part of the job.
Yes, with the universal GameCube controller update, if I'm not mistaken.
UCF, or
Yes.
Universal Controller Fix. It's kind of like an incomplete version of 1.03. That's the way I view it. The difference is staggering. Like UCF right now fixes 3 mechanics. I consider it 2.5 because shield drop is kind of like partially fixed. The final version of 1.03, it'll be final as of like next week. I'm fixing an 11th mechanic. So 11 mechanics compared to what the Melee community is currently playing on only fixes 2.5 basically. So that's a staggering difference in terms of how much I'm closing the gap between the box and the GameCube controller.
Speaking of controllers, I want to roll this by you.
Yeah.
I would like to introduce you to the accessibility controller that Xbox made around the same time that you released the box, or it became legal.
Oh, I saw this. This is weird. This
Yeah.
is really weird.
So what it's designed for, it's a kind of like how like it's a universal controller, so people with disabilities can push different buttons. And so
I see.
I thought about what the box was, and I was like, what is stopping someone from rolling up to their weeklies or even nightclub event with this controller, implying that it can be plugged in?
There's only so far you can go with this type of controller. Like I can't imagine that the controller I'm looking at, which basically has discs, like kind of touchscreen discs.
Yeah, so some people might touch it, like such as the buttons, like the A and B button are together.
Right.
Or some people can like it's like audio jack. So people would so someone might say, I want to touch the B button with my foot, hypothetically. Or you do left and right triggers with something completely different, like an audio system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, there's only so far you can go. I don't think that a game like Melee can be played very successfully with this type of controller.
I'm gonna love with you, neither do I. But I just kind of want to see like the immediate like reaction to it, because someone hypothetically wants to compete in Melee, and they can't have full range of their arms. So as a result, they use this like.
Yeah, I mean, that's like an even more niche subset of Melee players, because Box, for example, is maybe 10% of the player base or 20%, I don't know. The subset that you're describing, I've only heard of like 5 people ever mention needing a third controller type.
Really?
And yes, like I mean, this is very rare. I personally wouldn't have a problem with it. I think it's one of the things where like you can't have a problem with it because realistically none of those people are going to like be a problem in top level play, so I don't think you're gonna reach like any type of competitive concern. So like I wouldn't care. I don't think anybody would care. It's one of those things where in principle, like theoretically a third controller type could be OP, but if the social good enabled people in need to play and they weren't competitive concerns, then it would be legal in my opinion. But this isn't something that's manifested at all really, because like I said, it's like a single digit number of people that have ever expressed the need for this.
So what if someone does? What if someone becomes super noticeable and like makes like top 20 of like the year, or like maybe top 100 to be generous?
I think these types of what ifs are useless, and this was proven.
That's fair.
It's actually been proven with the box. Like when the box was first revealed, there was so much fear mongering. It was insane. So many what ifs, and now almost 6 years have passed. Very little of it has actually manifested. It's like the situation that we're currently in. 6 years in, the situation that we're in is one where we generally accept that it's a better controller than the GameCube controller, but it actually has not caused problems at all in terms of disrupting top placements, because it's obvious that you still have to be a world-class player to win on it. And so even though I concede that it is a superior controller, especially under the current rules with UCF instead of 1.03, It's obvious that these types of what ifs only ever serve to fearmonger, and that none of these concerns ever actually manifested to the degree that many try to insinuate.
I actually never thought about like, yeah, like if we fearmonger, we can play what ifs forever. I never, so like it's kind of like worry about it when it happens rather than worry about a what if that might not exist.
Yeah, but I think in this case, the scenario that you're proposing with a third controller type is just absolutely never going to manifest. I would swear my life on that. It's just never going to happen, because if it's been 6 years with the box and we're not really seeing competitive concerns manifest, at least not in terms of results, it's more of an on paper thing that the box is better. The possibility of a third controller type causing this to happen is non-existent.
Speaking of like third controllers, one of the things I saw like since the introduction of Slippy during COVID was people playing on keyboards, and I mentioned that keyboards in my essay that keyboards are super accessible, even though like able-bodied players might overlook it. Have people tried playing at events with keyboards?
I don't think so. I think if you're going to compete at an event, you'd absolutely want to obtain a physical box, because the quality of the buttons and stuff is just significantly better. Even though the keyboard could be doing the same thing in principle, the hardware is really bad in comparison. Keyboard is a great way to test the box's hardware and software and get accustomed to it. But if you're going to an actual event, no, I've never seen a keyboard. I think generally everyone is of the agreement that you would want to upgrade your hardware if you were going to play in an actual event.
I have like one big question, and that is like, because it seems like you're going in the direction of like I can totally like not rebuild Melee, but like totally like work on Melee for the foreseeable future. So my question to that is, what accessibility functions would you add so that anyone can play or everyone can play? This is a hard one. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Are you implying that there's still like a subset of players that needs to be tailored to?
So, maybe I'm unsure. So, for example, people might see like an issue with like color blindness as a result, so might not be able to see. To clarify, I wouldn't know. I'm not as into the FGC as you are, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm super into Valorant, for example. And I don't know if you've looked at it all, but they have a lot of they have sensitivities, functions. In addition, they have one thing that's really pioneering is a enemy highlight function, which I've sworn up and down is like the best feature like that like I've seen it in a first-person shooter in a very, very long time, because it helps people see enemy outlines. It's easy to see like, and it's very hard to be like. Someone to be hiding, like in Counter-Strike, for example, where like they could just hide in a very dark corner.
In Melee, there's one top player with color blindness, IBW. I think he just manages. I think the game doesn't present issues like that. Like, I totally understand. I used to play Counter-Strike for fun, so I understand how if there's like a dark area, that could screw you. In Melee, I don't think there's anything like that, thankfully, except for the FD white background, which we talked about earlier.
Yep.
That one definitely needs to be removed. But other than that, I generally think that with regards to accessibility in terms of issues like eyesight, I don't think there's anything like eyesight related that introduces this type of an issue. I think in terms of hand health, the box is satisfactory as a solution. So I think accessibility issues have been solved. I think another really good development recently was the FOB controller, which is a special GameCube controller motherboard. The reason that one is significant is because there were still some issues with acquiring a satisfactory GameCube controller motherboard. UCF didn't really fully solve that problem. There were some idiosyncrasies that could make some motherboards bad for competitive usage still. This new brand called FOB came out, and now most top players are using that. And so that's really good for accessibility too, because people can now obtain a GameCube controller PCB without much issue. So I think accessibility is actually pretty solved in this game at this point.
And that's the end of the video. I want to give a big thank you to once again for HAX and give a shout out to all socials.
Discord. My Discord server is the best place to reach me. You could feel free to provide a link to that. It's also available through my company website, box.com. My Twitter DMs are also open. Those are probably the two best places.
Yeah, and so what are you up to like now, like professionally? Like what tournaments can people find you at?
Yeah, I'll be back by like January 1st, locally at least. So I pretty much grind every day and I stay dedicated to the game. 1.03 has been the latest thing on my plate. I'm hoping to get it standardized at more tournaments once I get back. And then 2023 should be a good year for me.